The next presenter I want to go ahead and bring up is Steve Streeting, and he is from Atlassian. He grew up actually on the island outside of France, on a tiny island, but he actually does not speak French. Very fascinating things about him. And he also plays the drums. I think I'm going to start a little band with my speakers. So without further ado, go ahead and welcome up Steve.
Okay. Ooh. Hi, everybody. My name's Steve, and I'm from Atlassian. So this is me. I'm Sinbad on both GitHub and Bitbucket, and that's my Twitter handle there if you want to connect with me. I'm here today because I'm passionate about solving or helping to solve the problem with large files in Git. And the way I've been expressing that is by contributing to Git LFS in the last few months. So I've got a bit of catching up to do with Rick and Scott, but I'm pretty happy with my number 3 contributor place at the moment. Also, if you're keeping tabs on Git LFS, the latest update, or at least the big feature update that was done recently, which is now 1.0, there's a lot of features in there which you can blame on me. So you know who to ping if there's an issue. I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of those in a few minutes, but some of you might be wondering why Atlassian is contributing to a GitHub project and why I'm doing it. So in order to explain that, I'm just going to take you back in time a little bit. Because 15 years ago, I started an open source project called Ogre, which was a 3D engine, still is a 3D engine, it's still going right now. And it was used to power games, simulations, training projects, and all kinds of things. Some of those, one was Prown, that's quite a pretty one, and Torchlight, if anyone's ever played that in the series, that was my engine that was powering that. So I worked with a bunch of teams that worked on games and simulations and worked with very large files, things like textures and model files, animations, video, and sound. So I gained an appreciation of the kind of issues they had with working with version control with those sorts of files. And at the time, it was Subversion, Perforce, and even Alien Brain, if you've ever heard of that one. Probably nobody, but yeah, that was an interesting one. So 6 years ago, like a lot of developers, like pretty much everybody, I got into DVCS, and I loved it. I love DVCS. I loved it so much that I actually made a graphical application called SourceTree, which I'm wearing a t-shirt of right now. That was really just a tool for me originally. I just wanted something that worked the way that I thought things should work. But actually, it became a lot more popular than I expected, and that eventually brought me to Atlassian. So even though I focused on source control in the last few years, I've always had this thing in the back of my mind that I like large files. I like projects that use large files. I've done that a lot, but it doesn't really work with my my favorite source control system. So what are we going to do about that? So Atlassian was also hearing from customers as well. I mean, Atlassian's been serving professional software teams for over a decade, and they're coming to us and telling us that they really want to move to Git, but if they're using large files, it just doesn't really work very well for them, and that sucks for everybody. So late last year, we started talking internally about this, and we decided we wanted to really seriously get down and try and do something about it. So what we didn't know was GitHub was having the exact same thoughts as we were having at exactly the same time, and were having the exact same conclusions that we had. We knew nothing of this, obviously, neither did they. So we were beavering away on our own issue, on our own projects, and what happened was GitHub obviously came up with Git LFS. We came up with something called Git Lob, and they had very, very similar ideas. So we both decided that we needed a new tool. We didn't do this lightly. I mean, we looked at other systems that were out there already. We looked at Git Media, which we thought was just abandoned. We didn't know GitHub were doing anything more about it. But we felt that there was a need for something that was very easy to configure, something that works very easily out of the box, something that was designed for teams. It wasn't just trying to do all things to all people. It was designed for specifically teams who were working with large files. And we wanted to make it open source because, as Rick said, we want to interoperate with the Git community. We want it to be as easy to access and easy to use and adapt as Git is. And we just want to, leverage the community. And we both decided to write it in Go. So we both decided that Go is a very good system for writing this in because it created standalone binaries that are very easy to deploy. They're very fast. And it's a nice language. It's a modern language, and that's useful for getting people on board. If you're doing an open source project, you want as many people to be able to join it and be productive as possible. And we both decided that we would announce what we were doing at Git Merge earlier this year. And we both came up with these sort of fairly abstract, non-committal titles for our talk, because we were going to sort of, reveal what we were doing. And it was only in the bar the night before. We both had a talk on the same day. Actually, I think they were straight after each other. And in the bar, we was like, "Oh, yeah, we're doing this," and we're doing that as well. Really? Okay. And then we discovered that actually we had all the exact same thoughts and we're doing almost exactly the same thing. So yeah, that was an interesting week. We decided pretty quickly that there was no point us creating yet another tool. If we already had made the reluctant decision to create another tool, there's no point us creating two at the same time. Two new ones, especially because they were so very similar. I don't know if I've actually no, I've lost a. Okay. You can actually find, we open sourced our version anyway. You can find it on GitHub under Atlassian/GitLab if you ever want to see it. It's kind of archived now because I'm porting all of the features that we had across to Git LFS. So what we had, as well as having a lot of commonality, we found that there were certain strengths that Git LFS had and certain strengths that what we'd worked on GitLab had. So it made sense just to try and bring them together and just have all the features in one. So a lot of the things that you'll see in that slide that I mentioned before about the features that we've added, those came directly from GitLab, and I've just effectively ported them across. And that's been great because if I look at it, I looked at the features again, obviously as I ported them across, and having a second bite of the cherry when you're writing a feature means it ends up being better. So I actually like the version that I put in Git LFS better than I like the one that I did before. So that's good. So one of them is being able to fetch recent objects when you're doing a Git LFS fetch. So by default, when you do a fetch in LFS, it's downloading files which you need to fulfill your current head. And that's fine, but then if you then want to switch across to a different branch, if you don't have the files that are required, or the large files that are required for that branch, then it will go ahead and download them on demand. Which is fine, but it does mean you're waiting, potentially, when you check out that branch. And that potentially isn't as intuitive as you would think, because checkout doesn't normally mean downloading anything. So I added this feature called fetch recent, and that's configurable in the Git config. And it will basically go and find recent branches that have been updated. Maybe they're other people's, maybe they're yours. And it just means it will go and grab those and download them so that when you switch branches, you can automatically quickly get that content and you won't have to wait for it to download. It can also look at recent commits on those branches. So if you want to look at diffs, recent changes, diffs between things, you can see those as well. And this is all configurable. You can set the window that it looks for. And that's useful. And you can do this, maybe you would do it as a preemptive thing in the morning, or just as you go and get coffee, or maybe you would run it in the background as well, because it doesn't change the working copy, so it's safe to kind of run in the background periodically, maybe, to just keep grabbing things that you might need later, so you don't have to wait, because no one likes waiting. Another thing, a common thing with obviously like graphic systems, game systems, you get a number of people working in different roles, and they all tend to work on different files. So you might have animators working on one set of files and texture artists doing something else. And while you might want the convenience of having a single repository, so it's nice and easy to check out, each individual might not necessarily want to get every single change in the entire repository, because they might, texture artists might not care about the sound designers stuff and that sort of thing. So I've added a feature to allow you to include and exclude certain paths. And I've done this on the command line here, but you can actually configure this in the Git config as well. So if, for example, this was my repository, I'd have all these things like sounds and textures and things, and it would just skip those and only give me the models. And in this case, I've also excluded another subfolder of models as well. So I only get the sort of characters and enemies models that I care about. So if I'm a modeler working on those sorts of models, then I would only download what I need, which is good. There's more stuff in the pipeline. I'm currently working on a prune option, which mostly what's left of that is to do immense amounts of testing because I'm so paranoid. That's about deleting things which you don't need anymore, so you can keep your local clone as slim as possible over time. Also, the API, the new API we've got in 1.0, I want to make a native SSH version of that for people who want to use that. I'd also like to get involved in the resuming of transfers and maybe deduplication. And locking, which is a horrible sort of subject for DBCS, but unfortunately, when it comes to completely unmergeable files, you really don't want the situation where accidentally two people create two different versions of the same file and absolutely cannot merge it at the end of it, and someone has to lose their changes. And you do not want to be the person telling that person to lose those changes. So there are workflow issues to make it easier to make people aware that they won't accidentally create these situations. And of course, because Atlassian is supporting Git LFS now, we're definitely right behind it. Bitbucket and SourceTree will both be supporting it, so keep an eye out for the news on that. And that's me. Thanks for listening. Looking forward to making Git LFS even better over the coming months. Thank you.